Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Govea. I am a criminal defense attorney broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun deep in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. And today, my friends, we are talking about the defense. We're on day 40, Proud Boys trial. You remember the 5 co-defendants that we're talking about: Joseph Biggs, Ethan Nordine, Dominic Pizzola, Zachary Real, Enrique Tarrio. They're in day 40, which is a lot of trial to attend to. And we're going to go through it today. We're just going to jump right in. I want to remind ourselves about what some of these big issues were, because today is the day that the defense starts their case. For the last 40 days, we've been hearing from the government, and they've presented some very interesting witnesses. And I want to recap some of the problems that we were able to uncover. First, you remember one of the biggest issues that really drew our attention to this case was about FBI agent Nicole Miller, some people calling her a liar. I'll let you be the judge of that. But there was a big debacle about hidden spreadsheet rows. Remember, the FBI uses this internal messaging system called Link, kind of like a Slack or an instant messenger, sort of like our Telegram group for our members. And the FBI was communicating, and they turned over a bunch of the exported files, and they were able to find a bunch of hidden Excel rows, thousands of them hidden. The judge ultimately kept a lot of that stuff out, but they were communicating about how weak these conspiracy charges were against the 5 Proud Boys. They're saying, can we make this charge stick and, quote, not make a fool of ourselves? A lot of that language was not ever allowed in front of the jury. Similarly, we had this question about 338 items of evidence I have to destroy, just kind of haphazardly sent across an internal messaging system. They say, oh, it's just routine. We just delete evidence all the time. And then the response to one of those messages was, OMG, we've got to delete a bunch of stuff. Kind of nuts. We also had the deleted attendee was somebody who was on an official report, then were told to be removed from the official report. Delete the attendee, remove me, edit out that I was present, all involving a confidential human source. We also had issues involving FBI agents and maybe prosecutors. We don't know the extent of this, but reading attorney-client emails that were sent while people were in custody, like this guy, Zachary Real, sending emails to his lawyers. Apparently, FBI agents were saying, oh, we can rummage through whatever you've got in there. Why? Because you signed off on this little form here that gave us permission to do so. So that was an issue. We also had, of course, in the middle of this trial, this big revelation, these new January 6 videos that came out. And we talked all about that. There were several motions to dismiss, saying that this discovery, this evidence, was not ever turned over to the defense. The exculpatory materials that they would need to prove their client's innocence was never actually delivered to them. So some seriously big issues. As a reminder, we know who is in the courtroom. Judge Kelly is the person presiding, and we have not liked a lot of his rulings, with all due respect to Judge Kelly out there. But he has been, in my opinion, a little bit condescending to the defense, and we're not in the courtroom, but he's eye rolling at the defense. He's shutting up Carmen Hernandez. She's raising her hand saying, Judge, can you please call on me? And he said, no, we're not hearing from you anymore. So representing the Proud Boys, we've got these lawyers. We're going to hear from a bunch of them today since it is their case. Or Ethan Nordine, represented by Nicholas Smith. Norm Pattis, you may remember from the Alex Jones trial, representing Biggs, along with J. Daniel Hull. Zachary Real, represented by Carmen Hernandez. We've been talking a lot about her. She's really getting into it with the judge. Enrique Tarrio, leader, was currently represented by Sabino Jaraguay. Naib Hassan, also involved in the case. Dominic Pizzola being represented by Roger Roots and Stephen Allen Metcalf. We know the prosecutors, they're going to be doing the cross-examination today since these witnesses are from the defense. We've got McCullough, Kennerson, Mulrow, who we're going to hear a lot from today, and Nadia Moore. Now, we will take a look at the witnesses as they come up, but just as a little bit of background, Kenny Lizardo, they're going to debate about him. There was a big question about whether this guy was going to officially get a subpoena to come into court. We really wanted to hear from him. The defense in particular wanted him to be called in so that they could question him, because he might be, we don't know, an informant. He might be a confidential human source. And he was the guy who picked up Enrique Tarrio from jail on January 5th, the day before January 6th, obviously. So we're going to talk about him. He's going to come out in the first part of the trial testimony. We've got Emanuel. This guy was a musician, formerly from the Misfits, if you ever listened to them. Michale Graves also got called in. A lot of testimony from him. He joined the Proud Boys June 2020. He's just a musician. He wanted to go help the youth connect with music. And we're also here from Travis Nugent. I don't know if we got to Eddie Block today. We'll see where they wrapped up in court. But Eddie Block stopped by the show yesterday. And if he didn't testify today, he'll very likely be there tomorrow. So we'll check in on all of those people. Now, before we get over to the trial thread with Roger Parloff for day 40, we have to be properly energized before we get into it because we've got some heavy lifting to do. Over 200 tweets, I believe we're going to get to. And so before we dig in, remember that we all have an opportunity to lose and shred some of those leftover pandemic pounds. But how sick are you of all those weight loss pills and fad diets? You know, we've all been there. We've all done that. But, you know, none of that stuff works. But you know what does? Eating right, eating healthy. And that's why you can get your daily servings of fruits and vegetables with my friends over at fieldofgreens.com. They've got this product. Vegetables, I know many of us are not fans, and fruit, it takes a lot of time to prepare all of that every day. You don't need to worry about it. Just go to fieldofgreens.com, grab yourself this Field of Greens real organic superfood. It's a formula that's backed with specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. It's important because proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you can burn calories faster and lose weight the healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand that's backed by a better health promise. Yes, you're going to look healthier. You're going to feel healthier fast. But the greater proof is going to come at your next doctor visit when your doctor looks at you and he says, wow, you've lost weight. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. You look fabulous. So let's get you started. Go on over to fieldofgreens.com. When you check out, don't forget to use code Robert so you can save 15% at checkout, fieldofgreens.com. The vegetables want to be eaten. That's why they're here. You'll get the green energy, the good kind that's going to make you feel bursting with just nutritious deliciousness. And so check it out at fieldofgreens.com with code Robert at checkout. Now, it is time to get right into the trial. From our friend Roger Parloff. Remember, you can follow him. I'd encourage you to do that over at rparloff on Twitter. And here's what he says to start us off on the day. It's March 18th, day 40, Proud Boys trial. Roger says, I'll be live tweeting here. And you can follow me also at lawfareblog.com. He says that a lawyer named Joe Biggs is going to be delivering an opening statement, which should be very interesting for us. Let's see who that is. Lawyer for Joe Biggs, who could it be? Probably Norm Pattis. So Norm Pattis will be the person who's going to deliver an opening statement. Then we'll launch into the case. We're probably going to hear from Travis Nugent, and we're also going to hear from Eddie Block. Now, Eddie Block is in a wheelchair. We heard from him yesterday on the show. He at one point tried to quash the trial subpoena so he didn't have to go, but now he's obtained permission to appear with his service dog, which is a very good decision because he's a real good boy. And we'll learn more about Eddie Block if he appears in trial today. If not, we'll very likely hear from him tomorrow. We're back in session, day 40, Proud Boys. Judge Kelly's back on the bench. All rise. Please be seated. Oh, welcome back, everybody. It's been a long weekend. Hopefully yours was enjoyable. We have a couple preliminary matters to discuss here today. Defense, if Block is testifying, Eddie Block, he's here. Yeah, he's here in the back, Judge. We got him back there. We'll take a recess and we'll make sure everything's arranged. We are going to go ahead and grant the order so he can bring his service animal in and testify with him. So if you call him today, we'll just take a short break. Sound good? Yeah, it's very good. Thank you, Judge. That sounds great. We'll also bring in the jury, right? Now, the government, do you have any more witnesses today, prosecutor? No, Judge, we're done. Okay, well, we'll bring in the jury, then we'll have you rest, all right? Then we're going to go to the sidebar phones, and the defense will make their formal motions to acquit. He says, I'll reserve, and then the defense chimes in. So let's slow down. He'll bring the jury in, the government will rest, then we'll go on the phones, then they're going to make the motions for acquittal. And remember, when the government finishes their case, the defense has an opportunity to say, wow, that's a really nice story. That's excellent job. How many witnesses was that? Wow, 40 days, huh? You're not kidding. Wow. Good job. But you didn't present any evidence that actually implicates my client, right? Think about it in a DUI case. Like, what if they talked about a DUI case, but they didn't have any blood results and they didn't have any bad driving and they didn't even have your identity? They're like, some dude was driving a car and hit a pole. And you're like, that's a great story. That's crazy. But that's not my client. You never took his blood. You don't have his ID. And it wasn't even his car. So what are you here for? Right? You don't even have to put on a defense. You can just say, we move for acquittal. This is the dumbest case we've ever heard. Acquit him without presenting anything. And so the rules say you can do it. Now, most of the time, the government doesn't do such a terrible job that there's nothing even there for them to, hang their hat on. And so these motions almost always fail. The defense will make them so that they can make a record and say they didn't check the boxes that they needed to, judge. And then the judge will reserve his ruling, and then will deny for the defense. So, don't get your hopes up out there. These are just matters of formality. A lot of the times you'll see headlines, somebody filed a motion to dismiss. Like we saw that a lot with the Ghislaine Maxwell case. She filed a motion to dismiss, and everybody goes, oh, it's just a standard thing. The judge is going to read it and then throw it right in the shredder. So as this judge is explaining it, defense attorney Roger Roots, he says, excuse me, Judge, I want more time for my Rule 29, my judgment for acquittal. I'm hoping that we could at least get some initial rulings on at least some of the certain counts before we start my case. I mean, it would streamline my case. Like, you want all of us to file at the same time, but we're 5 different defendants here. I'm not doing what they're doing, and they're not doing what I'm doing. And so can I have some more time? And the judge says, well, all right. Let me think about it. I'll wait on that. He says, also, over the weekend, I was giving this a lot of thought, but that confidential human source person that the government may have communicated with or used to implicate the Proud Boys, his name was Kenny Lizardo. The defense wanted him to come and testify. They said, if he's a confidential human source, and he literally picked up Enrique Tarrio from the jail after he got out on January 5th, we might have some questions for him. Can we call him, please? So they filed a subpoena under seal. Obviously, they want him. Implication being he is a government informant. And Roger tells us, he says, yeah, Lizardo was pretty close to Tarrio. He was the guy who picked him up from jail. He was present with Tarrio in the parking garage on January 5th when Tarrio briefly met with Oath Keeper founder Stuart Rhodes and others. Weird. That's so strange. Why would a government informant, theoretically, we don't know if it's confirmed or not yet. Seems pretty suspicious, though, that Kenny Lizardo, his name keeps popping up, and we want him to come in and testify. He was in the parking garage. So the FBI had a source meeting with the 2 seditious conspirator groups on January 5th, and they were so incompetent that they couldn't even figure out what they were doing, and they let a whole insurrection happen. What good is a confidential human source then? And it wasn't just Lizardo. There were many other names thrown in the ring. So Lizardo apparently was a Proud Boy from Long Island. Now, Norm Pattis, he says, Judge, look, this isn't just the first issue that we've got, all right? We're going to be debating about a lot of these things. But the point is, Kenny Lizardo is not going to be testifying. Judge is going to file a motion to quash his subpoena. He's not coming in, right? We don't get to hear from him. Very convenient. No testimony from Kenny Lizardo, one of the only people who was in extremely close proximity to Enrique Tarrio, who has been charged. Strange. So this continues now. Norm Pattis, he also raises another issue for the judge. He says, Your Honor, we've been working on this stuff all weekend, and we've got a bunch of disputes, and it's reaching a point of crisis proportions. Uh-oh. What's the problem? Well, a bunch of the defense attorneys were getting together, and they can't figure out their schedules and their witnesses. This is one of the downsides of shoving a bunch of co-defendants into one case, very complicated case. And so the judge says, well, what are the issues? And I guess we'll take them as they come up. So we're not going to hear from you now. Just hang tight. So the prosecutor now says, Your Honor, we've got some issues. Because what? All right, Mr. Prosecutor. Prosecutor McCullough weighs in. And they say, Your Honor, we've been taking a look at this opening statement that we're contemplating from this guy, Norm Pattis, representing Joseph Biggs. He's going to come out and deliver an opening statement. And they say, we've got some issues with how this thing is going to unfold. He says that it's still not supposed to comment on any of the evidence, but it's just supposed to be a preview of the case, right? Because he's doing this after the government presented their case. So he's going to close the case. He's going to open this case, commenting on the evidence that's already been seen. And he doesn't want, this prosecutor does not want that to happen. So another defense attorney says, Judge, this one is Naib Hassan for Enrique Tarrio. So we're not even into the testimony yet. Naib Hassan for Tarrio, he chimes in and says, Your Honor, for our witness, we've scheduled a couple for Wednesday or Thursday, which surprised the judge, right? Because remember, the way that this was supposed to go down is Enrique Tarrio was supposed to basically be second to last. Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 defendants, co-defendants. Tarrio was supposed to be second to last. So if Tarrio is getting his witnesses scheduled only on Thursday, that's like really soon. What do you mean you're done? You're almost done on Thursday? We're on day 40 with the government's case. And co-defendant 4 of 5 is going to be presenting on Thursday. Okay. Judge is like, what? Tarrio was supposed to be a fourth defendant to present. And now we don't know what the issue is. And very briefly on this, we talked about this a bit yesterday, but I just wanted to refresh this because this is going to be causing some complications today if I can predict accordingly. But remember that each one of these defendants are also, they're adverse to the government. It's the defendants versus the prosecution, like you'd see in a regular criminal case. But there's also the possibility that defendants will be adverse to other defendants. So if Ethan Nordine calls in somebody to testify on his behalf that exonerates Ethan Nordine, it might exonerate Ethan by implicating Joseph Biggs. But what if Joseph Biggs also kind of likes some of the things that witness has to say? Because he also implicates, for example, the feds, right? One witness might have one statement that helps all of them. Like, yeah, there were a bunch of feds in there. That helps everybody. But may also say that maybe Pizzola was the person who did the actual damage and, right, try to hang the blame on him. So if you see a situation like that, now the judge is going to say, well, if one witness comes in, each co-defendant can cross-examine the witness at least as it relates to the issue that's oppositional to the co-defendant. So it's going to make more sense when we get into it, but think of it like mini cross-examinations to a friendly witness within the defense's case in chief. It's like a little bubble of a cross-examination within the defense's case. So we're back now. The judge says, all right, all that's out of the way. We got the scheduling stuff done. Now it is time for the jury to be brought back in. They come in, they're seated, and prosecutor Nadia Moore stands up and she says, the United States rests. Judge asks to speak to the attorneys at the sidebar. Now the judges are formally making their rule. Now the defendants are making their motions, asking for judgments of acquittal. Roger says these are always made. Judges always say they're reserved and they're always done on the record. But now we fast forward and the mechanics are done. It starts with the defense attorney, Norm Pattis, with his opening statement. Norm Pattis was a former lawyer for Alex Jones. This gentleman right here will be leading us through his opening statement. He says, ladies and gentlemen, there was no plan. There was no agreement. There was no implicit understanding at all about what was to be done at the Capitol on January 6th. He says a riot took place. That's all. Now, you're being asked to find these men sitting here today to be the masterminds of that riot. Now, you're going to find when the defense is done here that that is a preposterous claim. What you've seen here today and so far has indeed been a national tragedy. It's an event that caused great destruction to this country. And we are not talking about the events of January 6th. No, we're talking about this trial itself. This trial is a national tragedy, ladies and gentlemen. Extraordinary efforts have been made by this government to try to show you that this riot was a pre planned event. It wasn't. It was no more pre planned than the tornado that whisked Dorothy off her farm in Kansas. And I'm asking you here today to not mistake correlation with causation, ladies and gentlemen. You've been shown a coat of many colors stitched together out of text messages and the testimony of liars, but you should not be seduced in this manner. There is no mechanism here other than insinuation of the most dangerous kind. Protected speech has been transformed into evidence of a crime. Patriots have been transformed into traitors. This trial is a tragedy, as profound as the events of January 6th. And ladies and gentlemen, the evidence will show tens of thousands of people flocked to DC on January 6th, your hometown, where you live. The purpose was to be there to contest the election. They were summoned by the president of the United States, Donald Trump. Trump told them to be there. We'll be wild, he said. Now, he did that in a desperate attempt to hold on to power, to go to the Capitol and fight like hell, he said, or you might not have a country anymore. In the events of January 6th, he says, if these make you fear for the republic, ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, how Trump came to be president. But don't blame these defendants. Thousands of people came to petition for grievance. Emotions ran high. People were angry, rightly or not. They believed the government had done something wrong. They believed the president, and he encouraged them. You sit on sacred ground in this town, 5 square miles of territory set aside. So on January 6th, people came here to be heard. Hope, the same as thousands and thousands before, wanting to be heard and to be seen and to make a difference. In 2016, an improbable president took office. Our nation was divided. You know this. A nation divided went into a war. The glory of our republic is that we do this every 4 years. Now, enter Joseph Biggs, my client, sitting right there. He enlisted at the Army at the age of 20. He wanted to make a difference. Part of the 82nd Airborne, 3.5 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, led units on convoys, sat atop of troop carriers by choice. With his vehicle stuck, our nation honored him with the Purple Heart, one of the highest honors anyone can receive in the United States. Because he put his life on the line for you, and you, and you, and you, and everyone in this room. Then he went into Afghanistan, and he was there week after week. He was shot at, and he killed, and he was honorably discharged. And because of his injuries, physical and psychological, he received a full pension. But he didn't rest on that. No, he came home and he spoke out about what he saw. Forgotten men and women. He became an outspoken advocate for vets. The Rolling Stone interviewed him, Outdoor Magazine, Dan Rather, 60 Minutes. They all wanted to know who Joe Biggs was. He even attracted a social media following. He's an influencer. Other vets responded, but he struggled. There was a night that he was going to take his own life. He drank. He took pills. Serendipitously, someone called him that day. He had his stomach pumped and he survived. And later he became a father to a girl he adored and still adores. He earned online, following people online, and listened to what they had to say. After 2016, he was attracted to Alex Jones. He liked that Alex Jones didn't shrink from protest, had become a point man behind a 50 caliber machine gun, enjoyed camaraderie. The truth is, Joe Biggs, ladies and gentlemen, is an unsung hero. He joined the Proud Boys because he liked a sense of camaraderie. Being a part of a band of bros was important. And to blow off steam and talk to other men. In 2018, his mother was diagnosed with cancer, moved to Florida to be near her, met Tario. Enrique had charisma and charm. They say that Enrique's charisma and Biggs's online following was good for both of them. They paid attention to events in Portland. There were Antifa riots for months and months on end. Was the nation coming apart? It certainly looked that way. Biggs thought that he could protect people who were being attacked by Antifa for supporting Trump. If Antifa could riot, the Proud Boys could react, couldn't they? He was there for the forgotten Americans. And then, in the summer of 2020, COVID hit. Americans locked down, and what he saw on TV disturbed him. His business was locked down. He saw violence on TV. Portland was suddenly everywhere. We have a 400-year of stain of slavery, and Joe saw Molotov cocktails and thought there must be a better way. So Joe knew about the struggle and despair, and he and other Proud Boys decided to rally. And that wasn't racist. That wasn't part of a misogynistic vision. You've been told that by the media that he sat through this trial. A business of finding facts is hard work. And the Proud Boys have been beaten by the media. When the Proud Boys talk about being Western chauvinists, they're not misogynist. They're defending dead white men like Christopher Columbus and Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson. The Proud Boys believe in things, ladies and gentlemen, like the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. They believe that we are our history. You are the ideals you possess. The Proud Boys are here. They were foolish enough to believe that when the government fears the people, there is freedom, and when the people fears the government, there is tyranny. They didn't make that up. That's Thomas Jefferson who said that. But it's not clear that any of that is true. A debate moderator during the presidential election mentions the Proud Boys. Trump said this. He said, "Stand back and stand by." And then all sorts of people flocked to the Proud Boys. Jeremy Bertino, he says, is an unhinged liar, the person who we saw a ton in the chat. He says, fast forward to the election. Early results looked like Trump had won, but days later, he lost. Biggs had wondered what happened. President said that it had been stolen. All came down to a certification in your hometown. Trump encouraged people to march on the Capitol. The Proud Boys were confused and angry, but they were just listening to the president. They attended rallies in November and December, and they also clashed with counter-protesters. The Proud Boys concluded that we need to be better organized. Antifa's all over the place. So they created a small group of individuals to plan for the future. They called themselves the Ministry of Self-Defense. January 6th was supposed to be the first event of many to come. Leadership, small groups, discipline, avoiding chaos. There was another rally. Bertino got stabbed at a prior rally. We didn't want to herd cats. We wanted to separate the rally boys from the party boys. And then Trump fired somebody and stormed on the stage and took control of everything. MOSD talked about the need for a control group and to prevent violence. Always stand back. Don't be the ones to start the violence. They were working on this plan, and Tario got arrested on this on January 4th. And that's when things spun out of control. There was a new plan. The Proud Boys were supposed to meet, Washington Monument, prayer meeting. Then they would march as a group. Other Proud Boys would be on their own. There would be a rally the night before January 6th. On January 5th, they would meet at an Airbnb. One or more people would tell you no one discussed anything like storming the Capitol. There was no plan. There was no understanding. There was no implicit conspiracy here. Instead, this was just a group of people who planned a party for the afternoon of January 6th. They had a musician coming in, Michale Graves. You're going to hear from him. He was going to perform that afternoon at the Airbnb. If people wanted to get hammered, as was their wont, then that would be the time to do it. But it didn't take place, no. Instead, a riot took place, and they were swept up into it. It was chaos. On January 6th, Biggs was in his element. He stared down enemy fire. He advanced and retreated. He went up. He went back. He went into the Capitol. He came out, went back in, and came back out again. And for this, he gained nothing. No corrupt purpose behind this at all. That's important, ladies and gentlemen. There was no corrupt purpose. Now, I'm not suggesting he gets patriotism points for his conduct that day. Of course not. But when it comes to proving crimes charged, like the ones we're in court for here today, it's just not there. He was swept up with thousands of others. Isn't that what you saw in the videos? You know this to be the case. It's true. There was no plan. Even Jeremy Bertino told you that. An angry crowd snapped, and an unprepared, overwhelmed police department reacted in a confused way. We remain today what we were on January 6th, ladies and gentlemen, a nation deeply divided, working together to find a way to come together. Now, you've come to D.C. to live in a place where people want to be heard. What's being chilled in this case is the right to protest. There was not a pre-planned event on J6, but if there was, there's only one person who planned it, and he's not on trial: Donald J. Trump. End of opening statement. Very interesting. So he's going to be trying to blame this entire saga on Donald Trump, and he's not on trial yet, but it's looking like he may be indicted tomorrow. Was taking a look at the headlines to see if there was any news on that, wondering if that had happened already. But doesn't look like we're there quite yet. So we'll see what that looks like tomorrow. So that is the opening statement for the defense. That was for Norm Pattis on behalf of Joseph Biggs. The other defenses were already presented, opening statements. And so now we get our first witness up on the stand. Defense lawyer Nick Smith, representing Ethan Nordine, calls his first witness. His name's Michael Emanuel, also known as Michale Graves. The defense calls Michale Graves to the stand. Now, Michale Graves is being called by Nicholas Smith, representing Ethan Nordine. He's the first co-defendant in position number 1 in the indictment. So he gets called in first. And we do have a photo of this individual. Let's pull him up so we know who we're talking to. Michael Emanuel, also known as Michale Graves, is a musician, and he's actually a former member of the Misfits, which I think is a band that some of you may recall. He's called to the stand by the defense. Thanks for being here today, Michael. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? Certainly. Yeah, it's great to be here. He says, yeah, I'm a musician, actually. I performed with the Misfits from about 1995 to 2001. I play all sorts of instruments, very talented. And when did you come to know about the Proud Boys? Oh, yeah, the Proud Boys. Well, gosh, I mean, I became a member, I'd say June 2020 or so. He says, well, I'd known Joe Biggs from his days over at InfoWars. A friend of mine saw a post that I'd made on Instagram and said, hey, would you be interested in joining? So I thought, well, I got respect for those guys. I appreciate what they're doing. I saw it as an opportunity. There's a lot of young men out there. And, I was sort of attracted to the group. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity for me to mentor some of these people, to be kind of an example to them, help them out, musicians and artists, just an opportunity to be a positive influence in general. And when did you meet Enrique Tarrio? Enrique, same time, about June 2020. That was on a podcast. I met Ethan Nordine as well on a podcast. And when did you next meet Nordine? After June, probably January 5th. Back at that time, I knew him as Rufio. I came to DC to perform at the Latinos for Trump rally. I sang the national anthem there, and I wanted to see the speakers and to be a part of the rallies. I knew that Biggs and Rufio would be there and that Enrique would be there. And so that's why I went. He says, but when I got there on January 5th, Enrique had been arrested. And we know that because he got picked up and he was over in Baltimore. He says, but that was strange. So my contacts were Enrique and Biggs. So I was trying to figure out who all these people were. So I was put in touch with Rufio since Enrique was in custody. So I met Rufio at a hotel at DC that he was staying in. I got there around 2 p.m. And what was going on when you arrived there? Well, Nordine was on the phone a lot. We were laughing, a lot of confusion. Everything was kind of discombobulated. I mean, Enrique was usually the one that coordinated everything, but he was in jail. So now Rufio was going to be filling that gap. And he was overwhelmed. And we were laughing because it kind of seemed overwhelmed. It was like, what the heck is going on here? Now, how did Nordine feel while he was doing all of this? He said, well, I would not have brought Nordine on to do organizing, he says. He is not a good organizer. It was sort of like herding cats. I mean, eventually we got over to the Airbnb where everybody was staying, and Rufio and Biggs were going. We got an Uber, me, Rufio, a couple others. I don't know who rented the Airbnb, but it was on January 5th, and we discussed what we do. I was going to perform some music. I didn't have my guitar, so we decided to do it the next day on January 6th. We were all there, me, Rufio, some other person I was with. What were you going to do there? Well, I was going to sing the national anthem on 11 a.m. at January 6th for Latinos for Trump. So we thought we could go back to the Airbnb and I performed there, maybe like 7 p.m. or so. Okay. So everybody was going to go where there'd be a rally at the Capitol. He says, okay, a rally at the Washington Monument or at the Capitol? He says, well, it was the site of the rally. I mean, the rally had permits and everybody was supposed to meet over there. So yeah, I did. I went over to the rally January 5th. We stayed there for a couple hours. And then I left. It was right before 5 p.m. And we went over to the Peace Square. And what happened next? Well, I performed for Latinos for Trump. Did you ever meet up with Nordine, my client? No. How come? Well, I later heard his phone wasn't even working that day. All right. So you're here. You spent time with Biggs, Tario, and Nordine. Are they an organized group? Were they sort of well coordinated? No. Are they capable of ordering food together? Well, I've made comments. It's difficult for everybody to get into McDonald's together. So it's a difficult, like organizing things, right? Well, on the day of January 6th, he says, yeah, it's a difficult organizing group things, right? So making the point that this guy, they have a difficult time going, it's hard to get a group of guys to do anything. Just if you have ever done anything with a group of guys, you understand this concept. So it's not a surprise. The idea that they organized an insurrection to take over the country is hysterical and a joke. They're having a difficult time coordinating splitting a bill for lunch. On January 6th, you did not go to the Capitol. Is that true? That's true. Do you know Zach Real, this defendant over here? He said, well, I know of him. You ever seen him in DC? I might have. I don't recall. No further questions. Okay. No further questions from Nick Smith. Any other defendants have any questions for Mr. Graves? Nope. Nothing. All the other defendants silent. Interesting. So the prosecutor then jumps back up. This is Prosecutor McCullough. All right, Michael. You became a Proud Boy June 2020. Is that true? Yeah. You took the Proud Boy's oath, right? Yeah. Enrique Tarrio gave that to you? Yes. And you've posted images of yourself making a Proud Boy sign, haven't you? Yes. In your performance attire. Yes. Well, that actually was before June, but I reposted that image. She calls it performance attire, which is hilarious because they're calling it insurrection material. Like she's being mocking here, sort of pejorative. In your performance attire, like your costumes, your little vests and your patches. Okay. But then they're concerned these people were going to steal the country right out from under us by taking the podium. Yeah, actually, but I posted that image before. And you also spent time on a podcast, didn't you, with Nordine, Tario, and Biggs? Yeah. Next time you saw Nordine was on January 5th? Yeah. And you saw Biggs too. No, no, I didn't. You saw Tario though. Yes. When was that? The night of January 5th in a car in front of the hotel. And who was he with? Was he with Bianca Gracias and Stuart Rhodes and Kelly Sorrell? Yeah. And you saw them all follow Tario when he drove away from the hotel, right? Yeah. I knew them to be going to meet him. And so just to be clear, Stuart Rhodes, objection, scope. Nobody asked about Stuart Rhodes. Carmen Hernandez says, objection, rule 403. Stuart Rhodes, as we know, was the leader of the Oath Keepers, or former, and he was also charged and convicted. Sidebar, rule 403, when things are more harmful than they are helpful, we keep them out. Prosecutor says, now you saw all that take place at the Phoenix Park Hotel, right? Yeah. And you were with Nordine prior to that? Yeah. And Nordine, he was overwhelmed when you saw him? Yeah. Now, by nighttime, had Tario been released from jail? Yeah. So he was able to help at that point. Objection, sustained, cause for speculation or something. Sustained. Was Tario available to get in touch with Nordine after he got out of jail? Well, I don't know if he was able to. I'd imagine he'd be able to. I mean, if he's no longer in jail. And when you got to the Airbnb, Biggs was not there yet, right? Correct. You'd say that Biggs has a strong personality, wouldn't you? Yeah. You'd say he's able to command a group. Well, I know people look to him as a leader. So after you left the Airbnb, you don't know what happened. Is that true? Yes. Nobody told you what happened after you left? Well, I mean, those guys were drinking beer and hanging out. And prior to 5 p.m. that night, you discussed with Nordine about playing music for the guys. Yeah. Did you have a specific time? Well, I mean, it was going to be on January 5th, but we decided to do it on January 6th. I didn't have my guitar. So on January 6th, you might have started playing at about what, 7, 8 o'clock at night? Yeah. But you were at the Latinos for Trump at 11 a.m. True. And you performed some songs. You performed American Prayer. Yeah. And then after that, Stuart Rhodes and Soriel gave speeches. Yeah. Then you performed the national anthem. Yeah. When you did that, did you have a radio on your hip? No. You didn't have a walkie-talkie on? I don't think I did. Well, I want to show you this photograph of yourself here on that day. You recognize this? Yeah, that's me singing up there on the stage. You see that on your little side pouch on your handle? Is that a walkie-talkie on your side handle? Yes. So you're wrong. You did have a walkie-talkie, didn't you, liar? Yes, I had a walkie-talkie. And that was at 11 a.m., right? Yeah. And you're not due to perform at an Airbnb until 7 or 8 p.m. that night, right? Yeah. So the Capitol breached at 1 p.m., right? Yeah. So that gives you plenty of time to return and play your celebratory insurrection victory hymns, isn't it? Objection. Sustained. Prosecutor jerk. Your celebratory Nazi music. Huh. Objection sustained. Good call. Prosecutor says, would it take you less than 5 minutes to get from the Capitol to the Airbnb? Well, I mean, I don't know the proximity. I'd imagine it would take that long. Not that long, maybe. I don't know. Sidebar. Now, Attorney Smith has been objecting to nearly every question. Objection, objection, objection. And saying why lacks foundation beyond the scope of his direct or asked and answered. So the judge is apparently overruling him every time. He's saying, Judge, I didn't ask about any of this stuff. Why are they being allowed to go into this line of questioning? Ridiculous. Now, you said that you took Uber from your hotel in DC to an Airbnb. Is that true? Yeah. And that took you less than 15 minutes to get over there? Objection, overruled. Well, I don't remember how long it took me. Less than 30 minutes? Objection, overruled. I don't know. I assume less than 30 minutes. I don't recall. So, perfect. So the Capitol was breached at 1 p.m., says the prosecutor, and that leaves enough time to get to the Airbnb before 7 or 8 p.m. Objection. Were you saying the national anthem? That was around the Capitol, wasn't it? You were singing your insurrection Capitol song? Yeah. Could you have then gotten to the Airbnb by 7 p.m. or 8 p.m.? Yes. Now, one could do quite a bit in those 6 to 7 hours, right? Objection sustained. Nordine texted you at 7:53 on J6 and asked if you wanted to go back to the Airbnb. You remember that? I don't recall. You responded at 11:55. Yeah. You said, I'm safe, right? Correct. And you didn't apologize for missing the concert? I mean, you didn't play your music, your insurrection music? No. And you didn't ask him why he didn't get in touch about the concert? No. You didn't attempt to reach out to him prior to that? No. You've been active on social media. Yeah, the ones I'm not banned from. You're on Twitter? Objection, scope. Looks like that's sustained. Judge says, all right, we'll take a break there, everybody. 10-minute jury break. Attorneys, you hang tight. He turns back to the prosecutor after the jurors leave. He says, hey, prosecutor, where are we going with this? Prosecutor says, well, Mr. Graves has posted a number of items. He said that Rufio and Biggs were at the food trucks when the Proud Boys stormed the Capitol. I know that because I was there. Jury has a right to understand the potential bias in providing a public alibi for Biggs and Nordine. Quote, they did nothing wrong. I know because I was there. But Smith chimes in. He says, what are you talking about? The government didn't identify these statements before now. Judge says, well, of course, I didn't order them to do that. Well, we'd asked to see the tweet. So the prosecutor pulls out the one that says Rufio did nothing wrong. Then another post, 12:22. He posted, Rufio and Biggs were eating lunch while Ray Epps and his merry band were breaching the Capitol. Judge orders the prosecutor to show Smith the tweets. Now everyone breaks in advance. This is a picture of one of Michale Graves' performances when he's on stage. Jurors take a break. We come back and Judge Kelly is on the bench. He tells everybody. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what the prosecutor wants to dig into here is about going into bias. And so we're going to hear from Smith on this. So Smith says, well, Judge, look, our understanding is that the prosecutor initially was saying that this is impeachment material, which is different than being bias material. I'd say that only one of these that they want to use applies. And the prosecutor says, well, look, Judge, Graves has, in addition to posting on Twitter, he's given interviews. He's promoted misinformation about where the defendants were. Now, my intent is not to impeach him. My intent is to, the defense chimes in, says, Your Honor, the government has to show us this impeachment material. I asked if there were any other messages, and he said no. So I'd ask the court and the government again to show us in advance what other messages he plans to use. Prosecutor says, Judge, we're not seeking to introduce any of these for impeachment. Judge says, but showing bias is also a form of impeachment, Mr. Prosecutor. So the defense says, exactly. And that's why we want to see the impeachment material. Judge says, well, if there are other materials, prosecutor, that you plan to use with this witness, then it makes sense for you to disclose them and for us to discuss them. Obviously. Prosecutor says, if somebody has a body of statements out there in the public, I'm not using. Smith makes scoffing noises. He goes, what? If somebody has a body of statements out there in public, so let's just pause for a minute and break down what's happening here. The prosecution is trying to just bring out this new material and say, we want to impeach this person with public tweets. Smith says, what do you mean you want to use these tweets? You haven't told us about these tweets at all. You haven't disclosed us. This hasn't been part of any of the discovery. We had no idea you were going to go down this line of questioning. It's not even relevant to the scope of my original direct exam. So now if you want to go outside the scope to talk about bias and impeachment, then you got to tell us what you're going to be using to impeach our witness with, right? And so the judge is saying, Yeah, it makes sense if you're going to use them for you to disclose them and for us to discuss them. But the prosecutor is saying, what, judge? You want me to disclose like his entire body of statements? In other words, you want me to disclose his entire Twitter feed, is what you're asking me to do. I went to his Twitter profile or whatever the social media account was, and I just posted out and printed out a couple tweets here. And so you think I should just go through and just print off his whole Facebook account and just give that to the defense? So the prosecutor or the defense says, it's ridiculous, man. We're not asking for his whole feed. We're asking for what you're using in your impeachment. It's not complicated. Prosecutor said, look, it's all public stuff, right? I mean, he said it's all public, so I can use anything that's public. Smith is making more scoffing noises, all well deserved. He should be scoffing. Prosecutor's being an idiot. He said 9/11 was an inside job. He said something about the jabs. He said that the Proud Boys are not at the Capitol. He said that that was an inside job. So the judge says, slow down over there. As to the first couple things, okay, you're not going down that road, all right? 9/11 or the jabs or any of that. You're not going down that road. So he's going through all of his tweets. So he wants to impeach him on all this stuff. Defense chimes in again, judge. Now the judge turns back over to the defense. He says, Mr. Smith, for God's sake, raising his voice. Smith says, Your Honor, you ordered statements to be disclosed. Mr. McCullough, the prosecutor, did not disclose these. That's the court's order. We've not had the opportunity your court ordered us to have. He's also claiming that you mischaracterized the statements. These statements that he's intending to use are being mischaracterized. And now he's trying to impeach our client with those, and it's totally inappropriate. Scolded by the judge. For God's sake, Mr. Smith. Judge says, look, I'm tired of this. Just turn over the statements you're going to use, government, to the defense so we don't have to chop up this defendant's testimony. Shall I email him the materials? Says this whiny prosecutor. There's a podcast also. Yes, says the judge. Send them over in an email. He says, by the way, Smith is right that tweets don't say that they were at the food trucks during the first breach. It just says that they were eating lunch. So you should mirror that statement. Now, we're going to take 5 minutes, everybody, and I'm going to have the government, you prosecutors, produce those tweets over to the defense. Give them to Mr. Smith, and we'll come back. Sheesh, the judge, unhappy with this. Tired of all these bickering lawyers. So Judge Kelly's taking a break. Let's take a water break, my friends. Cheers to everybody out there. Cheers on this water break. And we're back. Judge Kelly takes a break. We're rehydrated, and we get right back to it. Judge Kelly comes back. Prosecutors back at the podium, resuming the cross-examination of Michale Graves. All right, Mr. Graves. So you communicated on social media that the Proud Boys were having lunch when the Capitol was breached. You posted that on the interwebs? Yeah. You believed it? Well, if I tweeted it, I guessed I believed it. Well, why'd you believe that? He said, well, I believe I read in a media report, so I tweeted it. Do you believe that today? Well, he says, I know the Proud Boys didn't breach the Capitol. That I do know. You told the public that Nordine and Biggs did nothing wrong. You posted that on Twitter? Yeah. Nothing wrong is what you said. Maybe trespass. I mean, I know for a fact that there was not some elaborate plan to take over the Capitol that day, obviously. You were not in the MOSD? No. You were not in the boots on the ground chat? No. And you were not in the Airbnb on January 5th after 5 p.m. Right. You were not marching with them that day. No. And you don't know what they were doing. I know what they were not doing. She's trying to get him to say that he's so distant from them that he couldn't have been a part of this conspiracy. So you don't know. Maybe they did have a conspiracy and you weren't a part of it. No, no, I know what they were not doing. These guys couldn't even order a hamburger together. So you're here to say that you were going to play a concert for them, right? January 6th, 7 or 8 p.m. He says, yeah, I was. That's the plan. Now, prosecutor Smith or defense attorney Smith is objecting to every single question. Objection, overruled, objection, overruled, objection, overruled. Prosecutor says, all right, I'm done. Smith jumps back in. Redirect exam. Going to rehabilitate this witness. Says, all right, Michael. Now, you testified that you had an agreement to come back to the house for the concert. That was around 3 or 4 p.m. Is that true? Yeah. And you were going to, prepare for the music and hang out and stuff. Yeah. So your agreement was sincere. He says, yeah, everybody was excited. Yeah. We wanted to keep people off the streets. I mean, we actually wanted people to be safe. And by the time 7 p.m. came around, the riot had been going on for what, hours? Yeah. Curfew was imposed. Yeah. And so it would kind of go without saying that you couldn't really perform on that night. He says, yeah, I would say so. So you were asked about a walkie-talkie. Now, did you use that walkie-talkie to talk to Nordine? No. He says musicians often use them. We communicate with the sound person at the front of the house. They're using a mixing board. They're using the light director, the tech. They help with the guitar and the monitors. I didn't think I had it on, but that's probably why I had it on. Thank you. No further questions. He's done. Now, the second witness comes onto the stand. Travis Nugent is called. Smith, representing Nordine. Your Honor, we call Travis Nugent. Travis Nugent, you promise to tell the truth, hold you. Yep, I do. All right, Mr. Nugent. Do you know my client, Mr. Nordine? Yeah. Can you tell me how you came to know him? This is, well, I guess I'd call him acquaintances. I know him as Rufio Panman, somebody from Vancouver, apparently associated with the Proud Boys at the end of 2019. Apparently, he's talking in a very soft voice, very sensitive. He says, we would attend rallies at a Pacific Northwest. We even helped organize some. Some just attended. So we became an acquaintance of Nordine. I met him probably around the end of 2019. After that, we'd see him every other, I don't know, maybe 3 months or so. Did you have any contact with Enrique Tarrio? He says, yeah, I did. I think right around the same time, 2019, 2020. Now, Travis, would the Proud Boys ever, in your experience with them, would they ever coordinate with law enforcement, work with them? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Why would you do that? Well, to keep communication going, to have a successful rally, stuff that doesn't devolve into violence. What would you talk about? Well, we'd tell them about our plans. And sometimes we'd get limited info from law enforcement. Now, let's talk about the rally that you guys were planning on January 6th. He says, well, I was originally going to do it outside of the Proud Boys, but that person backed out. So we made the decision to come and do a Proud Boys event. Decided to come before December 20 something. Decided to come with an individual named Jeff Grace and his son Jeremy. So we all flew out to DC. Oh, when'd you get in? He said, well, we arrived the evening of January 4th. And Travis, are you a member of any Telegram chats? Yeah. Which ones? Well, Boots on the Ground and Ministry of Self-Defense and others. Did anybody invite you to join these chats? He says, well, I kind of was just pulled into it. I don't really recall how it happened. Was there an application form or anything you filled out? I remember them talking about one, but I don't remember being involved. Were there any rules for these chats? I don't really remember. It's been about 3 years now. You remember if there were any rules involved to be a part of this group? No, I don't know for sure. Did you review those chats? In what fashion? Well, within those two chat groups, were there a lot of chats? He says, yeah, there were a lot. I mean, I don't really remember the details. Did you make an effort to review all of them? He says, no, absolutely not. And there are a lot of them. And there are a lot of chats that show up in the chat thread. In fact, our Telegram group, which is available for members, has 11 of them right now that I have not seen yet, which we'll review after the show. So a lot of them. Now, when he got to DC on the 4th, he says, I reached out to Ethan Nordine. He picked me up from the airport. What'd you do after that? Well, we went to a grocery store. We went to a liquor store. We brought out a lot of liquor, that's for sure. Went to my Airbnb downtown. I was staying there with Jeff and his son. Next day, January 5th, we also met up with Nordine. Later that evening at another Airbnb. Came with the graces. It was very laid back. People were just sitting around talking. Some people were Proud Boys, some were not. Some women within the first hour were a group of Proud Boys, sat around the dining room discussing what's going to go on the next day. You remember what they were talking about? No, not really. I don't really recall, I don't recall any conversation about the Capitol building, that's for sure. We talked about communications and not leading into what happened in December. Some Proud Boys got injured at a pretty severely, prior incident. So we were talking about, smaller groups. Was there a desire to avoid what happened in December? To avoid other things, like not getting stabbed? He says, well, I can't really remember about that. But we talked about where we'd meet, and one of the places we'd meet would be around the Washington Monument. What time was that? Well, about 10 a.m. Outside of that, I don't remember the details. So what happened next? Travis says, well, I went back to my Airbnb. Next morning, I walked to the Washington Monument, hung out there for about half an hour. People were really frustrated that Ethan was late. Got to be on time, especially for live streams. Don't think any of us knew what we were doing because Enrique Tarrio had sort of been decapitated the day before. At some point, Travis says, people started walking to the Capitol, toward the Capitol. I believe we knew we were heading toward the Capitol, but I didn't know what we'd do when we got there. Do you recall anybody in your group taking photos? He says, yeah, actually, yeah, there were quite a few. A sense that once you reach the Capitol, maybe you'd be there for a photo op, like you just go stand there, take some pictures. He says, yeah, that's exactly. I basically perceived the whole thing as a publicity stunt. Eventually reached the east side, went over to the Supreme Court side. Someone approached me, identified himself as a pastor. He asked for someone in leadership, then asked if we'd be willing to go through the gates to the steps of the Capitol. Go through the gates? He asked you about that? Wow, what'd you guys say? Well, Ethan Nordine denied the request in a roundabout way, told the individual, that's not going to be happening. Okay, we're not going there. So Smith is now showing a video clip. We're on the east side of the Capitol. Nordine has a megaphone. Now we see the pastor walk up to Nordine, and Nugent is standing right there too. Oh man, we don't have this video. Playing the video. Pastor walks up. Hey, we going inside? You guys willing to breach those gates and go inside there, take over the Capitol? Probably a Fed. Pastor Fed. 100%. Want to know who that person is? He says no. Probably Ray Epps' pastor. You want to go breach the Capitol? No, we're not doing that. So they play the video for the jurors. Great. Okay, did you eat lunch, Travis, while you were there? I don't think so. I don't think I ate. I think other people did. It was on the side of the Capitol building where the food trucks were. Now there's another video. They play. You recognize this video? Yeah, that's who's that? That's me right there. Were you ever involved in any decision makings about what you guys were going to be doing next? No, I actually don't think there was ever a decision about what to do. No agreement was ever made about what to do next. So what happened? Well, I remember there was a lot of back and forth as to what was going to happen. Some revolved around whether we could just call it a day and go back to our hotels or our Airbnbs. Nordine made a couple of comments about calling it a day. Any idea why he would say that? Well, there was a conversation about being hungover and out of it. Yeah. Man, we were out too late for an insurrection today. Insurrection's off. I need some Advil and a nap. Did Nordine say he was hungover and out of it? And he says, well, I can't be certain, but yeah, a lot of people did say that. But other people didn't want to call it a day, right? Yeah, there was a back and forth. I mean, I don't know that a decision was ever made. Things just started evolving. A lot of things just started playing out. I mean, as far as the crowd coming over from the White House and the National Mall, a large crowd was coming over from the Trump rally, hodgepodge of people, anybody and everybody, nobody in particular. I know that there was a talk amongst the group, standing around talk amongst the group that Alex Jones and his entourage were coming from the Trump rally. I heard about it, but I never did see Alex Jones or his entourage. It was all just kind of chaotic. And so ultimately we moved away. I don't know that any decision was ever made. It all felt spontaneous to me. I don't know that it was related to Jones. We walked toward the Capitol from the food trucks. I don't know what we would do next. I recall going to a fountain area near Peace Circle. Did you recall at some point people began jumping over burial barriers outside? He says, yeah, there was definitely a time. They play another video. Now, Nugent, Travis IDs Biggs and Nordine. What were you feeling when all of this was happening? He says, I remember being a bit shocked. Honestly, I didn't think it would happen. And knowing we weren't supposed to be going past those barriers, it definitely felt spontaneous to me. I knew we weren't supposed to go past those barriers, and it felt spontaneous to me. So just prior to all of this, we stood in a straight line right there with a bunch of photographers just taking pictures of us all. That's it. Just standing there, taking photos. For the most part, I was in close proximity to Nordine. They play another video. This one showing Proud Boys marching to show how close Nugent was to Nordine. Is that how close you were to Nordine this entire march? Yeah. Judge says, all right, we're going to take a break right there. It's lunchtime. We just had a break. Gosh. All right, we're going to excuse the jury for lunch. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great lunch. Have a sandwich. Come on back. Remember, don't talk about the case. They leave. The judge says, okay, attorneys, here. Now, I'm open to the idea, just so everybody knows, that after Nordine is done here, if all of you defendants agree, if you want to change the order of your presentations, that's fine, just so long as all the notice requirements to the government are met. Sound good? Sounds great. So remember, they were supposed to go in the original order. I guess the judge said you could change that up a bit. They were supposed to go in the order of the indictment, essentially. But the judge just said they can change some of that up, which is good. So they go to lunch. Through the magic of Twitter and our friend Roger Parloff, we fast forward right through it. They're all full, a little sleepy. They come back. Judge Kelly's back on the bench. Nick Smith Nordine resumes the cross of his second witness, Travis Nugent. Is it a cross or a direct? I think it's a direct exam. He says, welcome back, Mr. Nugent. Now, we were talking about the crowd. Would you say that when the breach started, would you say that the crowd was or weren't acting with a herd mentality? Objection sustained. Yeah, herd mentality, which he shouldn't have said that. So disregard that answer if it was sustained. But the jury heard that. So you were having conversations with Nordine and Biggs on the way to the Capitol. Is that true? Well, I wouldn't really say that. Were you planning to use any force on this day? No. Well, how do you know this individual named Eddie Block? He says, oh, yeah, I know him. He's a Proud Boy from California. He was filming the group that day. And he's the person who recorded this video? Yeah. So now there's another video. All of them are ID'd again. Smith says, do you know this person? No, don't know who that is. It's real. He's sitting right there in court. I want to play another video for you, another clip. You guys all in this one? Yeah. How about this one? Are you all in this one? Yeah. And what were you doing here? Were you gesturing right there at that video at 11:21? Yeah. In what direction were you pointing? That was back towards the Washington Monument. Why were you pointing there? He said, I was questioning whether we were heading back towards the Washington Monument or the rally there. That's kind of what the plan was. We were there to stick up for people, to be around the rally. You know, I'm not sure what the ellipse is, but the rally Trump was having was where we were going. That was your understanding of the plan? He says, what do you mean? Well, watching the clip, what was your plan? He says, well, it appears I'm trying to get confirmation of what the plan was. I don't even know what we're doing. They play another clip. So did the group that went over Battles move closer to the Capitol building? Yeah, they were going all the way up to the steps. And here in this video, it looks like you identify yourself with your hand on Nordine's back. You see that? Yeah. What are you doing there? Why is your hand on his back? You know, they're sort of on each other's backs. What are you doing there? Well, it looks like we're just trying to stay together. Was that part of the plan? No. Did you understand that to be what's called a stack formation? No. I want to show you another clip. Now, here's another clip. And here's another clip. Do you recall this one? No, actually, I don't recall this instance, but I didn't see him stopping anything. I recall him like marching between the police and the protesters. I can't say for sure, but I thought he was trying to stop the crowd from attacking the officers, not hurting the officers, stopping the crowd from attacking the officers, according to this witness. So after that, what happened next? Well, I left that scene after about a half hour or so. I told Nordine, you should probably be getting out of there. Not a good idea. Don't know that he ever even heard me with everything going on. Did Nordine say that he needed to find his friends? I don't recall. I'm not 100% certain that he said that. Are you any other percent certain? Well, I vaguely remember talking with him at some point about getting the guys or something. Why would he want to do that? Well, because we were not supposed to be there. I want to play this video for you. This one shows Nordine raising his hand and saying ho, meaning to say stop. What's he saying there? He's trying to get our group to stop. Is that consistent with what you had heard before about trying to find people who went ahead? Yeah. So after January 6th, did you participate in any of these chats? Yeah. Did you talk about clearing chats? Yeah. Yeah. So it would no longer be there. I mean, we usually try to clear everything up, especially from Antifa. So you had heard that Antifa had doxed Proud Boys before, right? This is why you guys are deleting evidence because Antifa is doxing you. And this is very true, by the way. If you search for these guys' names, they are doxed all over the internet. I'm not going to show you that here, but they are. Antifa went crazy. They've got a bunch of people just rummaging through everybody's history and building websites with all of their information on it. He says, highly doxed. Antifa attacked my home. They put letters in my mailbox telling my neighbors. They harassed me. They put posts to me on Craigslist of me selling furniture, and they had people come over. Okay, so there was a pretty big fear about the Proud Boys being doxed by Antifa and others. He's, yeah, big time. Very much a fear. So that led the Proud Boys to want to get rid of the messages? Yeah. You testified before the grand jury, right? Yeah. Did you tell the truth? Yeah. And you've not been charged with any offenses here? That's right. No further questions. So we have another defense attorney now who jumps in on this. Carmen Hernandez takes the line of questioning. She is representing Zachary Real. This is Carmen Hernandez, former president of the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, NACDL. She jumps in. Yeah, we don't know if this is direct or cross. Yeah, we don't know. Hernandez, a little bit far away from the mic, she says, so when you were testifying here, Mr. Nugent, you said that you couldn't identify that guy on that screen. Do you now know that that's my client, Zachary Real? I guess I do now, yeah. Did you see Real carrying weapons? No, I don't recall. Did you see him carrying a flagpole or a walking stick? No, I don't recall. Did you see him carrying flex cuffs or bear sprays? Nope, don't recall. Don't recall. How about, did you see my client knocking over any bike racks or fences or scaffolding? Did you see him throw projectiles or frozen water bottles, like they say? Impede anyone? Did you see him spit? Did you see him take police equipment? Did you see him help anyone do any of those things or break anything? No, I didn't see any of that. No further questions. Next defense attorney is up, Sabino Jaraguay, representing Enrique Tarrio, is in the House. Mr. Nugent, did Tarrio cooperate with law enforcement and local police whenever a rally was supposed to be held? Yes, absolutely. And he would call the police and inform them of the plans? Yes. And he would cooperate with the FBI before rallies, right? Yeah. Were you present when he cooperated with law enforcement in Portland? Yeah. When Tarrio was arrested, they didn't know what to do, right? Right. You didn't know where he was when he was arrested? Yeah, I spent 5 hours looking for him, actually. Did you speak to Kenny Lizardo on the 5th? Potential CHS? I don't know. And did you learn later that Lizardo was with him most of the day on January 5th? No. No further questions. We get a cross-examination from the prosecutor. Prosecutor Mulrow comes out. She says, "You doing all right?" He says, "I'm a little nervous." Nice move by the prosecutor. Check on the witness. Good move. Makes her or him look good in front of the jury. "You doing okay?" "Well, I'm a little nervous." "Don't worry, I'm just going to try to shred you and eviscerate you here on cross-examination, but it's all going to work out." When you were a Proud Boy, that was an important part of your life there, wasn't it? Yeah. And when you were a Proud Boy, you said or did things differently than you would today? You said, "Well, I don't know how to answer that one." When you agreed to rally with the Proud Boys on January 6th, you'd been a member for what, about 2 years? Yeah. You had a fair amount of experience? Yeah. You met with members of national leadership at the Proud Boys? Yeah. Your handle was CR Boy on Telegram, wasn't it? Yeah. And some of those chats found in Tario's phones and Nordine's phones, those were yours? Yeah. You were Travis Vancouver on Nordine's phone? Well, I don't know how he had me labeled. And all of these events shaped your perspective, did they not? Objection, scope, sidebar. Prosecutor comes back. Now, you said that you were shocked by what happened on January 6th. Objection, misstates, overruled. You said that when a crowd went through the barriers, you were shocked. Is that right? Yes. You didn't think there was any plan to use force on January 6th? Correct. You had every reason to think violence was in store, though, didn't you? No. Okay, so you joined the Proud Boys, though, late 2019, early 2020. Columbia River Proud Boys, Washington State, right? Yeah. And you were once the vice president of that chapter, weren't you? Yeah. You were the fourth degree Proud Boy, weren't you? Objection, overruled. And so you know what it's like to run an organization. Yeah. And in order to become a fourth degree Proud Boy, isn't it true that you have to become or have to have been involved in a conflict in order to obtain that status? Yeah. And that had to be a violent conflict, right? Negative. It could be a peaceful conflict? Yeah. Was yours peaceful? No. Huh. So, okay, that's interesting. So yours was not a peaceful one. Thank you for that. So you're a violent monster. So now I want to ask about the difference between the rally boys and the party boys. There's a difference between the two of those groups and the Proud Boys, right? Yeah. The rally boys were into politics. Well, all Proud Boys were. And the rally boys, they like to confront Antifa. Is that true? Yeah. Rally boys like to go to protest. Yeah. You knew that to rally boys, the word protest means violence, doesn't it? Well, I think there's more to it than that. I mean, that's definitely a portion of it. Do you know the song Protest Time? Like closing time? No, I'm not aware of that. You're not into doing drugs or drinking? That's right. But you did go to the rallies, yeah. And Nordine knew about you, objection sustained. So you went to rallies with Nordine, right? Yeah. You viewed force as being a part of the Proud Boys. No. You didn't think that? Well, at times. So your attitude was always go ready to fight because that's the world we're living in. Quote, you said that, didn't you? Always go ready to fight because that's the world we're living in. Does that sound like you? He says, is there a source that's coming from? Yeah, actually, it comes from Telegram. You recognize this? Hernandez. Objection, relevance. Overruled. Mulrow starts to ask a question. She says, and when you're there were knives, weren't there? Weren't you? Didn't you have knives? Objection, sidebar. Prosecutor goes back. So that's your message, right? Always be ready to fight. That's the world we live in. Defense objects, sustained, restates the question. On December 13th, 2020, isn't it true that you sent a message to the Proud Boys chat saying the following? Objection! Overruled. Saying the following, but always go ready to fight. That's the world we live in. You said that, right? Yes, I did. And you also had artwork in your Google storage accounts that celebrated the Proud Boys as heroes of violent conflict. They went through their whole they went through their whole digital life to go through everything. Ugh, these prosecutors. You saved memes celebrating the Proud Boys as heroes of violent conflict. They're probably just so petrified every time they go to bed. He says, "I'm not sure." Objection, sidebar. You recognize this photo from your Google account? Yeah. It's groups of people fighting, isn't it? It's Proud Boys versus Antifa. Yeah. You posted videos that glorified going into battle. Objection, propensity, sidebar. Propensity meaning that it shows that because he is involved in other things of violence, that you can presume that in this thing, he is more predisposed to violence. You don't like to use this evidence in cases where if for example, in one DUI trial, you can't say, well, he also got a bunch of other DUIs, therefore he probably got this one. That's not appropriate. You have to prove this one in it of itself. Once he's sentenced on this case, you can aggravate because of the prior DUIs, but you can't say that this person has a propensity to commit DUI, therefore we can presume they're guilty of this DUI. That's not appropriate. So she's objecting here, saying that, this is propensity evidence, and sidebar, prosecutor comes back. Do you know what videos we're talking about? No. You know the type of video I'm talking about? Yeah. And those are the videos that got people fired up, right? Objection, sustained. Now, you helped your chapter with recruitment. Is that true, Travis? Yeah. And the official story, the chapter, it's just kind of, you guys are there for self-defense, but that was just for appearances, right? It wasn't just for self-defense. He says, no, I'd say no. But you said that aggressive use of force was not just tolerated, it was celebrated, right? You said that. Objection, sustained. You once used those words on Facebook. Objection. Prosecutor says, dudes tried to fall out Tiny and Donovan for their Trump flag, and it didn't end so well for them. He says, well, it wasn't just a flag. Prosecutor asks, do you remember being a part of a Telegram chat called the PDX event page? Maybe, I assume I was. Do you know if Tario was a part of the chat too? No, I don't know. On August 2020, you used that to recruit Proud Boys to attack some cars that you thought belonged to BLM and Antifa, right? I don't remember that. Quote, so I have a guy I worked with. Objection, sidebar. Now they have a photograph, apparently a drawing of the Proud Boys beating up Antifa people in a brawl on the screen. Proud Boys are beefy guys. Antifa people are skinny people in black hoods. One is being strangled by a Proud Boy in the foreground. To BB's credit, I suppose, one of the depicted Proud Boys is black. Very diverse group. So it must be a meme. Let's see. Let's just take a quick search. Let's see if we can. Not seeing anything, unfortunately. Okay, so looks like a meme. Looks like, a meme. Not sure what it is. Now, Judge Kelly excuses the jury a little early for its afternoon break. Attorneys stick around. Judge says, all right, listen. So I understand Mr. Smith, but look, this is a subspecies of things, and parties have been arguing about this for a long time. This witness said, oh, I didn't expect any violence that day. These are things that tend to undermine that claim. So I see it as perfectly legitimate impeachment evidence, though there's a limit to how far down this road we can go. Defense attorney Carmen Hernandez says, Judge, it's hearsay. These are all out of court statements that are being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. It should not be coming into this trial. It's not direct evidence of anything. Judge says, Miss Carmen, we've already been through this, okay? Mr. Smith made a lot of creative use of statements that he said were for impeachment. I allowed that to go on. And Carmen says, okay, yeah, but those were statements from his little chapter in the Pacific Northwest, has nothing to do with anything. Judge says, well, when we're impeaching this witness, it doesn't matter if your client was in his chapter. It has to do with the Proud Boys more generally. Defense chimes in and says, yeah, but Judge, look, evidence of other crimes or wrongs, which we call propensity evidence, which is trying to be used to show bad character or that someone acted in accordance with that bad character, is not admissible regardless of whether it's proper impeachment. So Smith went back to the rules and he just pulled open the rule book. He said, yeah, here it is, Judge. And the prosecutor responds and says, oh, we have a menu of options given the way this evidence has been made relevant. He says, we're going to go around that rule that says we have to keep it out and get it in using a different rule. It is relevant now. To the extent that each of these messages impeaches his broader testimony, it's got independent probative value. Just get him to say it's his message and put it in. We're on cross. Question is whether we have a good faith basis for asking, and we do. Defense says, to impeach what? He said he was shocked by J6. That lets them go back years and find every celebration of violence by this man because he was shocked on January 6th. We get to go back and look through everything he's ever talked about. The judge says, you're right. Yeah, there are limits. There are limits. I'll keep an eye on it. Thanks for bringing that up. And we'll see. So the judge now excuses everybody for 10 minutes and says, all right, attorneys, you get a break too. We fast forward. 10 minutes fly by in an instant. Judge Kelly's back on the bench. Now, Smith asks, looks like this is directed to the judge. He says, okay, Judge, we were on break. While we were on break, two people informed us that they saw Nugent, who was just on the stand, speaking to two FBI agents. Nugent's counsel spoke to them. Witness received threats from people who mistakenly believed he's an informant. It was an inappropriate conversation. It was an inappropriate conversation referencing what? I don't know. FBI comes up to Travis Nugent, says you are the subject of credible threats. They say it's inappropriate. Why are the FBI agents talking to our witness? Judge says, wait a minute, what? Government agents went and talked to the witness for the defense in the middle of an exam? What happened, Mr. Prosecutor? Mulrow says, look, I only know what I just heard about this from Mr. Smith, but this isn't the first time the issue of safety for this witness has arisen. Our understanding is that Mr. Nugent is the one that first approached the agent. Judge says, okay, but look, it's still best to not have conversations there. Said, all right, well, let me know if anything comes of that. Don't talk about that stuff. Let me know if there's any other problems, moves on. Says, all right, now I've decided during break that asking Nugent about violent rallies after the election is fair game, but not prior to the election. Otherwise, I think you get to dive in and ask questions. Prosecutor says, well, there's a point on January 4th or 5th when Nordine takes over, when Nugent sent a message to the group as promoting Nordine as the leader and threw his support behind him. Says, I plan to go into that. We're likely going to be introducing an image from Nugent's Google account that is a stylized version of the punch heard round the world. We think that's relevant to the state of mind and the expectation for force. That's a roundhouse punch, says Roger. It's caught on video. Nordine decked an Antifa person, a black woman, I think, who had a knife. Oh my gosh, out of control out there on the streets. So Mulrow comes back in and says on January 4th, Nugent wrote a message to the new chat members saying the following. Hey, so right now, guys, we need to fall into Rufio. Let's not make that public, though. We've got to make sure someone is running this, though. People looked up to Rufio. He was a hero, and that was because of his fighting ability, they said. Judge said, all right, Mulrow, you can ask why Nugent favored promoting Nordine, but I doubt I'll permit the introduction of that illustration of the punch. Smith is asking the defense whether Nordine had fighting ability as character evidence and not appropriate. The judge said, well, he can ask about why he favored promoting Nordine as the leader. Judge also says one juror on Friday or the weekend broke a bone in their foot. Oh, man. Juror broke their foot. Hopefully they're okay. Hopefully not running up a flight of stairs on an elevator. Only appointment she could get is Thursday afternoon at 2 p.m. and it's urgent. So we're sitting on Friday though. All right. So they get some of the technical stuff out of the way. We're back in the cross exam. Mulrow continues for the government. Says, all right there, Travis. Now, after the election, you started to see police as your enemies. Is that true? No. But as of 11/29/2020, you said the following quote, we allow the cops to become social justice warriors. Isn't that true? Well, I'm not aware of that post, he says. You said that they serve a purpose, but if they're going to play games, it's time to play, right? I'm not aware of that one. Well, I have the post. So would you like to see those here? Did you post those? Yeah, I see it now. Now the messages are being shown to the jury saying if they want to do that, it's time we turn our backs on the cops. Now, the prosecutor says, okay, Travis, now when you said that it's, quote, time to play, you're not talking about hopscotch, are you? And he says, well, potentially we could be. I'm pretty good at it. I got the hops. In other messages you spoke about when Antifa sticks around, we'll, quote, bring out the toys. You mean guns, right? I don't know, he says. Could have been slip and slides. Cops love a slip and slide. Now, as of 121, you believe that it was time for, quote, the Proud Boys to, quote, change up our attire and show commie police will not be taking their tyranny. Did you say that? He says, I don't remember this, but, well, I do. Here's this message. Shows it to the jury. You sent this message, didn't you? Yeah. So let's talk about that phrase called change up that attire. Now, when you're not wearing colors, people might not know you're Proud Boys, right? Yeah. Sometimes it's helpful that people don't know your identity, right? Yeah. And you've used unregistered cars to avoid divulging your identity, right? Objection sustained. Now, you yourself have directed Proud Boys not to wear one color, at least on one occasion, right? Objection sidebar. I want to show you these messages from November 29th. You recognize these? Yeah. What did you say here? It says, Nugent says, this will be recon only for now, no colors. Come ready to fight, though. Did you write those? Yeah. You also said, Travis, that you were inspired to go to January 6th by what happened in December. Is that true? Do you remember this Parlor post from Enrique Tarrio saying Antifa has been running from us all night? And do you remember this one? You knew there'd be some serious violence in DC on 12/12, didn't you? Yeah. And you talked about that in some of your messages. You did that too, right? Yeah. Couple objections and a sidebar. Now, Travis, you knew that in December, some of your guys, quote, stomped a dude out, didn't you? Yeah. You said that the Proud Boys beat a dude unconscious and the cops saved him. Is that true? Objection 403. That's the more harmful than helpful. Does it help the jurors determine these defendants innocent or guilt? Or is it just harmful in a way that's not helpful? Objection rule 403. Looks like that probably got kept out. December, though, is what inspired you to come in January. He says, yeah, I would say so. And you didn't just come by yourself. You were coming a part of the chat. Well, I wouldn't say that was true. I was in the chat, but I don't know that I was a, quote, member of it. Someone's phone is ringing. You were a member of the MOSD chat? Yeah. And they didn't let people in the chat unless they were a part of the group. Is that right? Well, I don't remember the guidelines, but you knew you were invited. Yeah. You knew it was secret. Yeah. And you weren't supposed to tell others about it? Yeah. So you were in chat groups where there was a discussion of preparations, weren't you? Probably. I don't recall. I'm going to ask you about strategies and tactics. Now, in terms of strategic objectives, you knew that there was an overall goal for the DC rally, didn't you? Yeah. You made reference to that goal. I'm not sure. Well, I can show you one of your messages. How about this one? Yeah, I wrote that. And you said it was, quote, a big thing with this event is that we need everyone focused on the goal of the event, right? Yeah. And leadership decided that, right? Tario had the final say? I don't know. You knew leadership was putting tactics in place to achieve that goal, right? What do you mean? Well, one tactic was not to wear colors, like to blend in. Yeah. Another was making sure plans weren't revealed to law enforcement. I'm not sure about that. Well, I want to show you this message. It says, we need an admin to go through this chat and nuke everything. You sent that shortly after Tario was arrested, right? Yeah. Because you didn't want these chats to get into the hands of law enforcement, right? Yeah. And you don't think Tario told the police his plans for J6, do you? I have no reason to believe he didn't. Another part of the MOSD tactics was putting people in leadership's roles, right? Well, I'm not sure where you're going with that, he says. Well, some people are better leaders than others. Was that true? Yeah. Before he was arrested, Tario was calling most of the shots. And after the arrest, you all needed to make adjustments. Yeah. You had an opinion about who the best replacement would be, didn't you? Yeah. And you said that we need to fall under Rufo, right? Yeah. That was your message, but it was somebody else's idea. Yeah. This was Nordine's idea, wasn't it? Yeah. But you agreed with it? Yes. He had a pretty heroic reputation amongst the Proud Boys, didn't he? Yeah. What made him heroic? Was it his ability to use force? Kind of famous for his fighting ability? Yeah. You looked up to him? Yeah. And you had a file in your Google storage doc that celebrated his fighting ability, didn't you? I don't really know what you mean by that. Oh, do you recognize this image? Yes. Move to admit sustained on 403, meaning it's more harmful than helpful. So that image is not coming in. Don't know what the image was. And doesn't look like that was published to the jury either. Apart from being known for his fighting ability, Nordine sometimes spoke in blunt terms, saying, we got to use force, right? I'm not sure. You ever listen to his podcast? Objection, sustained, outside of scope. Now, you weren't a leader, were you, Travis? Correct. You considered yourself a nobody in the Proud Boys? Yeah. You posted this in the channel. You said, I'm nobody, but doing what I can to help. We will be meeting tomorrow in the morning and continuing on with the plan. Now, you were referring to the group leaders, weren't you? No, actually, that was a grammar mistake. Oh, moving on. The night before January 6th, you gathered at an Airbnb. Yeah. Some people had issues with Biggs, another co-defendant in this case, right? Yeah. He could kind of be over the top with the rhetoric, right? Yeah. But the night of the 5th, though, people were pretty much ready to respect his leadership, weren't they? Yeah, I believe so. Smith chimes in for the defense. Judge, there's a scheduling issue we have to alert the court to. It's an emergency. Uh-oh. Sidebar. They return. Prosecutors back. So at that meeting at the Airbnb, you guys talked about a lot of things, right? Yeah. One of the things might have been about tactics. Objection overruled. He says, yeah, sure. Like the use of radios. One tactic, yeah. And breaking into smaller teams and a time and place to meet. And you conveyed all of that to others, right, who were not at the Airbnb, didn't you? Yeah. Now, one thing that was stressed during this entire ordeal was that, quote, everyone needed to follow commands of leadership. Did you say that? Yeah. Even if they didn't fully understand the plans? That's fair. And so Smith, the attorney who just got done questioning you, showed you a bunch of videos. You, Nordine were in there. You guys were in close proximity because you respected him, right? He was the leader. Yeah. And it was decided that a group like yours was going to march in one big group up to the Capitol, and you were not going to break into smaller groups. Is that true? Yeah. So leadership took you to the Capitol, but not to the Trump speech. Right. And that surprised you. Well, it wasn't what I was expected. A whole lot of people took photos. Yeah. You enjoyed the photos. People looked up to the Proud Boys, right? Objection sustained. Remember, You said that a supposed pastor came up to the Proud Boys and asked about going past the barrier. Remember that? Yeah. He knew that if he wanted to get that done, the Proud Boys were the ones to do it. Objection sustained. Prosecutors. I want to turn your attention over to this video. It's about 11:21 a.m. Recognize these Proud Boys here approaching the peace circle. We see Nordine on the phone. He says, "We know what the oath is. Support the Constitution of the U.S. against enemies foreign and domestic." The Proud Boys discussed with police officers not following their oaths. That's something you guys talked about. Yeah. I want to show you this other message that's overruled. Message says, "We have to hold some sort of moral high ground. We can't scream F the police, but we need to hold them accountable. Can't continue to follow their orders. Objections are overruled." Someone asks, quote, "How do we hold them accountable?" Nugent, you said the following: by calling out their BS, demand they do their effing job, support the oaths they take, and if not, they're just acting as government goons. Did you say that? So when it was time to leave the food trucks, leaders decided where to go, right? You didn't, correct. And then you went to the peace circle. Yes. Crowd once the Proud Boys arrived, started getting very hyper. Is that true? Yeah. Very soon after you got there, the crowd pushed past the barricade. Yeah. You weren't sure what to do, were you? No, you're right. I wasn't. So you fell back on the chain of command. That's a fair statement. And you compared the crowd to farm animals, right? Yeah. But people aren't like farm animals. He says, well, they are actually. They can make their own decisions. So can farm animals. So you turned to Nordine and said, "Are we doing this?" And he just looked at you. He says, "Well, I don't remember the details, but that sounds about right." And he went forward to the Capitol and you went with him. Yeah, that sounds about right. Now playing another video. Nugent is following Nordine. Follow the leaders. That's what they impressed upon you in the group chats, didn't they? Yeah. And now we're seeing them in stack formation, the same video they played earlier. Objection, cumulative, overruled. Now you see Biggs going over to Nordine, and then the fence comes down, and you followed them, right? Yeah. And we hear two different breaches in another video. You tried to be the voice of reason, didn't you, Travis? Yeah. You told Nordine, "We need to get on the mic to control the crowd." You said that, right? Sounds about right. Now they're playing the videos. Rioters are right up with the officers. In fact, you asked the police if they had a bullhorn you could use, didn't you? Yeah. You knew how much people in the crowd respected the Proud Boys, didn't you? Yeah. But nobody got on the bullhorn to call them down, right? Right. So you grabbed Nordine and told him it was time to leave. Yeah. And he ignored you. Well, I don't know if he heard me. He didn't ask what you said. No. Your perception is he didn't want to hear you? I don't know about that. Do you remember telling the FBI that Nordine didn't want to hear you? Something along those lines. You made a decision to leave because you knew this riot was interfering with law enforcement, right? Yeah. You knew it was interfering with politicians inside the building, right? Well, I didn't at the time. You knew that fighting the police was different from fighting Antifa, right? Objection overruled. Nordine stayed. Yes. And he wasn't worried about his hangover anymore at that time, was he? Objection sustained. Big stayed, right? Yeah. And you left the Capitol, but you stayed in the chat for some time. You said a message that said, "Scrub all these chats," didn't you? "Please wipe this chat," right? You cleaned up your phone. He says, "Yep, I left the chat. I delete the chat." And how did it feel seeing people celebrating something you knew was wrong? Objection sustained. As a result of J6, you've received some unwanted attention. Objection relevant sidebar. Some people believe that you're cooperating with the government. Yeah. And you feared for your safety. Yeah. And you received threats from individuals associated with the Proud Boys. Yeah. They said that you've got it coming. Yeah. But you're not a confidential human source, right? Correct. Jeff Grace has accused you of being a witness for the government. Correct. Prosecutor is done. We're now back on redirect. This is Smith's witness. He says, Travis, you're leaving for Florida tomorrow. Is that true? Yeah. And you were not aware of a plan to use violence on January 6th, right? Correct. Do you think the plan you reference on J5 had anything to do with storming the Capitol or using violence against the police or Congress? No, no, and no. Was Nordine's comment about wanting to go back to the hotel after food trucks consistent with wanting to storm the Capitol? No. Did previous chats have anything to do with a plan for J6? No. Were the chats in the Proud Boys telegrams meant facetiously, meant in jest as a joke? Oh, yeah. A lot of chats you'd find crazy? I don't know. Some comments about using violence. Did it always happen in the real world that there was violence? No, no. Most of the time? I don't know. When the prosecutor was asking you about violence, did he ask about offensive or defensive violence? No, he didn't. So the majority of what you were involved in was defensive violence. Now, you also saw the chats from Nordine indicating that he wanted to use force offensively. Did you see those on January 6th? No. You referenced turning our backs on the cops. Was that part of the plan on J6? No. You referenced not wearing colors. Would the Proud Boys not wear colors because they didn't want to be ID'd by people that they're hostile to? Yeah. That would include on January 6th? Yeah. The government asked you to testify before the grand jury, didn't they? Yeah. Did the government ever tell you that your testimony was not accurate? No. And you've not been charged with any crimes? Correct. Smith is done. Nugent is done. And the judge now asks to speak to the counsel at sidebar. Judge says, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we're only going to have a half day tomorrow on Tuesday and on Thursday. Friday, we'll have a full day. Judge says, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, do not talk to the media. You're admonished, but we are done. Excuses the jurors for the day. Attorneys stick around. He says, all right, defense attorneys, what order are we going to proceed in? Norm Pattis responds, says, we're getting info about the confidential human sources from the government and that Pattis may ask for Wednesday off depending on how much info they get. The judge says, we're not giving you Wednesday off. What are you, nuts? We're going to give you time to go through newly disclosed discovery and prepare your defense? You're going to be here on Wednesday. Just stay up all night Tuesday night. You'll figure it out. Jerigwai is saying that he's still trying to get the name of the FBI agent handling Shane Lamont, but still hasn't gotten it. Judge says, well, it might be productive to spend the second half of Thursday to hear you on jury instructions. And then is the case going to go off to the jurors on Friday? Holy moly. Now recessing until 9 a.m. tomorrow. Hope to see you tomorrow. Our friend Roger Parloff doing an amazing job live tweeting the trial. And you can see we got through 2 additional witnesses today. I was wondering if we were going to hear from Eddie Block, but looking like he may be called in to testify tomorrow. So to recap, we caught up on a little bit of some rulings from Kenny Lizardo. Apparently, he is not going to come in and testify. A request for a subpoena to drag him in here has been quashed by the judge. We learned a little bit more from Michale Graves, Michael Emanuel, Proud Boy musician there, saying there was no plan. None of this stuff was a giant conspiracy. They were supposed to have some music, and it was all much ado about nothing that turned into something out of a disorganized, organic fashion. Travis Nugent came in. We heard from him some interesting testimony. We'll see if Eddie Block is there tomorrow. But that, my friends, is it for us on the trial. And so, of course, we're going to take your questions and see what you have to say about this before we go over to our member-only debrief and after party. And so if you are a member at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, or if you're a YouTube member, stick around, join our private Telegram group for our debrief and our after party as soon as the show is over. And we also do extra content. We had a morning show. We're talking about the financial meltdown. We're talking about World War III. We're talking about individual sovereignty and about the primaries and all sorts of other fun stuff. So come and join us for members only content, either at watchingthewatchers.locals.com or on YouTube by clicking that join button. But all right, my friends, let's see who is in the chat and see what is going on out there in the world. Has Trump been indicted yet? Let's do a quick detour on that and see if there's been any updates on this before we change gears entirely. Bloomberg says an hour ago, Donald Trump will be no ordinary New York defendant. Barricades go up around New York for the possible indictment, 11:01 a.m. Criminal court, Alvin Bragg on Monday. They are putting barricades all over the place. Trump said on Saturday. Here, this is what Mayor Eric Adams just said recently.
Mr. Mayor, when do you expect a Trump indictment to come down, and what is the city doing to prepare for that?
Well, it's up to DA Bragg, and we've heard a lot of reports, but the DA is going to make that determination, and we're doing what we always do. We're monitoring comments on social media.
Why?
And the NYPD is doing their normal role of making sure that there's no inappropriate actions in the city, and we're confident we're going to be able to do that.
Discuss this with Alvin Bragg yet? Have you been meeting with him at all?
No, not at all.
So not talking about that. Looks like here's another scene. They're putting up barricades around. You can see what the scene looks like over there. Yeah, the FBI agents will be able to push those right over, no problem. They'll be able to just knock those over. They won't even have to think about it. So that'll be interesting when they do that. Nice of them to do that. Hopefully the FBI agents don't get hurt when they're rioting again. Here, this one came in from Benny Johnson. Also saw this breaking. Michael Cohen's former legal advisor, Robert Costello. Michael Cohen was Trump's ex-attorney. Robert Costello, who appeared before the Trump grand jury today, calls Cohen a convicted perjurer and said he is far from solid evidence. This was over from, looks like News Nation.
They were getting upset. I'm the one who decided to do this. A lot of people cautioned me against it because I had nothing to gain. The only thing I'm doing is trying to tell the truth to the grand jurors, because I read all these lies in the media that are being promoted by one side. If you see the full picture, listen, if they want to go after Donald Trump and they have solid evidence, so be it. But Michael Cohen is far from solid evidence. This guy, by any prosecutor's standard, and I used to be deputy chief of the criminal division in the Southern District of New York, I wouldn't have touched a guy like Michael Cohen, especially if he's a convicted perjurer. Not to mention, as I said, the 50 to 100 lies he told us that are in those 330 emails.
How can you persuaded the grand jury from indicting the former president?
I can't say that because you just don't know. I can't read people's minds. I could see certainly a few of them were doing what you're doing right now, shaking your head up and down, but not everybody. So I just don't know. I would love for those people to watch TV or something tonight, or just remember what I said and say to the prosecutors, listen, we'd like to see the rest of those emails. Don't cherry pick 6 emails out of 330 and then ask Costello questions about it. That's not fair by anybody's standard. That's pretty. I have a statement here. I'll give it to you people. Yeah.
Stormy Daniels with his own money, not at the behest of Mr. Trump.
That's what he told us. Yes, not his own money, money that he borrowed pursuant to a HELOC loan. Yeah. And why did you take the loan, Michael? I wanted this secret. I didn't even want my own wife to know, much less Melania Trump.
But just to be clear, did he ever specifically tell you that Donald Trump does not know about this?
Yes, absolutely. He said that.
Donald Trump does not know.
That's what he said at the time. Is it true? I don't know.
Did you tell the grand jury that?
Yes, I
Wow.
did. But I had to force that into an answer. They were getting upset
Wow.
because they'd ask me a limited question based on one of these 6 emails, and I would volunteer information that I thought the grand jury needed to hear.
So they're trying to create a mens rea for Trump. They have to come up with some sort of intent. We read the statute yesterday. There's these 2 elements of it. You've got the actual conduct, which would be the falsification of the record, with the intent to defraud. So Trump's got to have that mental state. You know, the money may have come from him, ultimately tied back to him, but if his lawyer is just, you know, doling out checks all over the place and Trump is none the wiser, and Cohen confirmed to this guy, another lawyer, Robert Costello, that Trump had no idea about any of this stuff, where is that mens rea? Where is that intent? But the grand jury, sounds like the prosecutor who was presenting this stuff had no real desire to get into that line of possibility, that line of questioning. Instead, Costello had to shove it in there on his own. So I fully expect that tomorrow we're going to be doing a very extended stream talking about the Trump indictment. We'll probably be on Trump indictment watch probably most of the afternoon tomorrow. We'll see. The show might be starting a little early, so keep those notification bells ringed, because depending on what happens, we may jump on here early and dig into all of this stuff. Proud Boys trial will be short, should be like a half day. And so we'll go where the attention is. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. Let's do a quick refresh and say hello to our friends on YouTube, on Rumble, on Twitter, before we jump over to our member-only content on Locals and Telegram. P-Bub Designs is here, says, is the jury sequestered? No, they're not. They're admonished, but they are not sequestered. We really haven't seen a jury sequestered at all. I mean, the Galin trial, the Rittenhouse trial, we had the Derek Chauvin trial. We just haven't seen it. But thanks for swinging by here, P-Bub. Appreciate you, my friend. And Fred Pedamonte is here. Says, Rob, Johnny said, quote, I started Proud Boys with Gavin McInnes years ago. Oh, gosh, it all makes sense now. Tario, FBI informant, I left when they cried when I showed up with C4 plastique. So, yeah, the Proud Boys was a little bit too kind of weak for Johnny. Johnny likes to play around with C4, uranium, level 4 biolabs, people like Epstein. You know, no disrespect to the Proud Boys, but these guys are just, Johnny's at a whole different level. I mean, he's hanging out with Bill Gates and stuff. So that makes sense. So Gavin McInnes and Johnny started it. Tario took it over. But anyway, well, good to see you, Johnny. Let us know what group you're a part of now. Good luck to all of the world, since Johnny's in charge. All right, and so those are our great friends over on YouTube. Thank you, everybody on YouTube, for sending those in. We have our Rumble friends, NC Native, Dog Digger. We have Army Brats in the house. And Eric Scorpio is telling us that Cohen was behind on his fees. Dog says there's a Right Side Broadcasting Network. There's a rally for Trump over on Right Side Broadcasting. Those are from our friends over on Rumble. Let's say hello to Twitter before we wrap it up on the beautiful day. See if we have any nice comments over there. We've got 3 viewers, which is crazy. Here's what Paul says. Here's what goes on during your hydration break, hiding something. Well, what I do is I turn the camera off and I mute the audio, right? So I can actually mute the audio. Muted, now the audio is unmuted. Now the audio is going to be, it's unmuted. And so when I'm guzzling water, I kind of hide all the noise, the gurgles and the slurp. It's for your convenience. It's so you don't have to hear it all, you know. And and here's the Trump drink challenge. Trump can drink water with one hand. I can do it too. Check it out. Oh, can you hear that? My headphones, friends? Slurping it up. Oh, yes. Oh, so good. All right. And so, thank you to our friend Paul Mino at Sleepy Dog Lee on Twitter. Shenanigans in the justice system. Are there shenanigans? Yep, there are. That's for sure. We had a couple other comments come in. This one is from Nate Silver. Interesting question. March 17th. If you're a Democrat or a Democrat leaner who isn't really considering voting Republican in 2024, who would you rather win the GOP nomination? Trump, DeSantis, or not a Democrat? Wow. Oh, I just had to sneeze. Oh, my whole rib cage almost just exploded. Oh, gosh. That was a painful one. All right. So let's read that again. If you're a Democrat or a Democrat leaner who isn't really considering voting Republican, who would you want to rather win the GOP nom? Well, I mean, wouldn't you speculate that this would be whoever they think is the weakest candidate? This is the people that you want to win. They want to win because they think they can beat them, right? So I think a bunch of Democrats think that Trump is probably the most easily beatable, which is why they would vote highest for him. But Elon says slightly surprised by this result, meaning you think it would be a lot higher, right? I think you'd think that this would be a much higher number, that all of the Democrats would want to run against Trump, but maybe not. Maybe they want to run against DeSantis. Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so those are our great comments over from our Twitter friends. We are going over to locals for our after party right now, as a matter of fact. And so we hope to see you there, my friends. The web address is watchingthewatchers.locals.com. If you are on YouTube, don't forget to join the Telegram. If you're a YouTube member, that is, join the Telegram by finding the Telegram link in the community post. Also, don't forget to get your Field of Greens over at fieldofgreens.com. Check out with code Robert. The vegetables want to be eaten. You know who also bought her Field of Greens, my friends? My mother did. She told me this weekend. We were at a church service, and she said, "Guess what?" And I said, "What, Mom?" She said, I did it. I said, "What?" She said, "I got my Field of Greens." And it was a very very impactful moment for a young son. You know, I'm used to having my mom tell me, "Eat your vegetables." And now I get to tell my mom, "Eat your vegetables, mother. Eat them. They're good for you. Think about the starving kids in China. Eat your vegetables." And so mom is going to be eating her vegetables. Hopefully you're eating yours at fieldofgreens.com. Save 15% with code Robert. Also, want to shout out my former law firm, although I'm no longer at the R&R Law Group. They are still kicking butt in the state of Arizona, helping good people charged with crimes. And so they are available to help at 480-787-0394. And we are grateful for all the mods and the meme smiths who mod the fort down for us. Of course, we're saying ultra shout outs to our friend Playing Hooky. I saw Ronnie Cole was in the house. Just Cause was also in the house. Good to see everybody modding down the fort for us. And we had our meme smiths, Geegum Geegum, Sleepy Dog Lee, our Twitter mods, Zach Nichols and John Allen. We're grateful for everybody in the house. But that is it for us on the day. We are going over for our debrief, our after party. I hope to see you there. Members, sign up and join us. Otherwise, if we don't, we'll see you right back here tomorrow so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.